everybody, and thank you for being here at this round table. Before starting the round table and the discussion with the colleagues, I would like to tell you that Professor Alessandra Bertoldo, Professor Suzine and myself thought that was a good idea to have an introduction to this topic, and so we invited two speakers to talk about gender medicine and gender and innovation first. Unfortunately, Professor Giovanella Baggio gets sick, and so she cannot be here today with us. She apologized, and she sent videos that we will watch together. Okay, so we apologize for that, but it was the only way to have her contribution. And so Professor Giovanella Baggio is a senior full professor of the University of Padova. She's been the first chair in Italy on gender medicine. She is president and founder of the Italian Research Center for Gender Health and Medicine. Is member of the scientific board of International Gender Medicine Society. And she is a scientific editor of the Journal of Sex and Gender Specific Medicine, and she's a member of the University of Padova Elena Cornaro Center. So she's the perfect person to talk about gender medicine and to introduce the topic. So let's watch the video together.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very proud to can give some idea about gender-specific medicine to your very important Congress on gender bioengineering. I'm Giovanella Baggio. I'm president and founder of the Italian Research Center for Gender Health and Medicine, as already Dr. Dalman has said. I'm member of the scientific board of the National Gender Medicine Society, and I am senior full professor of the University of Padua. I had for the 5 years a chair on gender medicine. What is gender medicine? First of all, gender medicine is not women's diseases, as a lot of people think. Gender medicine is an approach, a different approach to men and women of all age, health and diseases, and from the intrauterine life to pediatric period and going up until the geriatric period, and I say the third, fourth, fifth life. This is my centenarian's birthday of the 12 years birth date. I was nearby. So, gender medicine is not a separate specialty. It is a transversal dimension of medicine which studies the influence of sex and gender on human physiology, pathophysiology and pathology. And the need for gender medicine arises as there is too many studies which describe disease exclusively focusing on one sex. Many of you, mainly men, may say, but women live longer. What would you like more in the life? Okay, it is very important to say and to know what I'm now to showing you in these two slides. Life expectancy at birth in Italy, nowadays, let us say in 21, the last published by ISTAT, is 80 for men, is 84.6 for women. Women have an advantage of approximately 4.5 years. But if you like to know not only the life expectancy, but also how many years of healthy life you have, for example, when you are already 50, let us have in Italy, if you are already 50 years old and you are in Italy, you will have a life expectancy of 30 years if you are men, and of 35 years if you are women. And this is expected from the previous slides. But I think it is very important for all of us, not only how many years, but how many years of healthy life we will expect to have after 50 years. So let us have a look. No more differences between men and women. No more differences. That means that when men with health problems are far more likely to die than women with similar problems. On the other side, women live longer but suffer disability and ill health. And this is very important difference. So it is vital, really, to understand just how different medicine for women is compared to that for men. And for this reason, I am a doctor. I see patients every day. I will show you some real cases, real patients I have had to introduce some differences in medicine between men and women. This is a 54 years woman, a real case, a real patient of mine, so-called Fervida. The pictures are all taken by Google. She had since 2 weeks abdominal pain. So his husband, an evening at 9 o'clock, decided to bring her to the emergency of the hospital. In the emergency, they were very quick, very efficient, and they sent her to the gastroenterology department to have a gastroscopy. And they did the gastroscopy in half an hour. But this lady has nothing in her stomach. She had an acute coronary syndrome because she had the atypical symptom of acute coronary syndrome that are in women. And this is a case of cardiology. Women has a prevalence of atypical syndrome. That means they have atypical side, they have atypical irradiation, right arm, epigastric in the face, often described as burning or shooting pain. Sometimes the pain is completely absent or is not the most important element. However, neurovegetative manifestations are dominant. In some cases, profound fatigue is dominant and maybe the only symptoms. So this picture, very well known, of a man with a pain on the chest is not very often present in women. So women has very often atypical symptoms for myocardial heart infarction. And this is important because heart infarction is the first cause of death of women. And the leading cause of death, in Italy at least, but all Europe is as in Italy, are 38% cardiovascular disease for men and 48% cardiovascular disease in women. So nobody think about this very huge amount of women with cardiovascular disease. The women are not aware about this danger, but unfortunately even medical doctors are not aware about this statistic so high for women cardiovascular disease. And let us have a look to the past longitudinal study published on risk factor and prevention of cardiovascular disease. These were studies that are still underneath our guideline that didn't take in consideration any women, not few women, but any women. The multiple risk factor intervention trial started in '86, has followed for 9 years 350,000 men, no one women. And this is for risk factor. But if you go and you have a look to the cardiological European studies, the clinical studies which described which are the drugs that have to be used in cardiological heart infarction, for example. This has, yes, they have some women, but of course with any statistical power. And this is another list of other female participants in chronic heart failure trials. Chronic heart failure is very important. Is even more presented in women than in men. And again, you see a percentage of women not good for statistical elaboration. Let us go to another kind of disease. This is Giovanni, 74 years, very good old grandfather. He was playing on his knees on the carpet with the two nephews. He lost equilibrium, but what happened? He broke his femur. He has a hip fracture. Okay, this guy, Giovanni, never did the densitometry. Never done. Moreover, the discussion is, but if a man does a densitometry, which is the normal values for men? Because this machine are standardized with lot of cases coming from female cases. And 50% of men over 60 have osteopenia or osteoporosis, and mortality after a hip fracture is much higher, it's 4 times higher in men than in women. And this was internal medicine. So before I show to you a cardiological case, now in internal medicine, let us have a look to another case. Ada. Ada has a little pain in the tummy since a month. She was guilty. She was guilty because she didn't send the specimen for feces examination. So she went to a pharmacy. She took a advice for bringing the specimen to a laboratory, but she was happy because the occult blood in stool was negative. However, this lady had a cancer in the right part of the colon. You know, female has much more frequently the cancer in the right part of colon, and this is a cancer that give very late the positivity of the occult blood in stool. The right is the right cancer, the right colon and rectum is more frequent in men. So very often female have very late diagnosis, and this lady, these are all very real cases. My patient had already hepatic metastasis, and her other unfortunately died after 3 months from this story. And this is in oncology, so internal medicine, cardiology, oncology. Why we arrive to this let us say very terrible mistake in the diagnosis? Why guidelines don't speak about the difference in the cancer of colon? I'm underlining this because in a very important publication was very well written. And right-sided, left-sided in men, high mortality after 65 years in women, and fecal occult blood negative, and also molecular biology differences. So it is urgent need to review screening program, at least in Italy. I don't know how it is in other countries. I go to another case. Patients. Umberto, 53 years old. Since 6 months he had insomnia and he didn't want to talk so much as once. What he did? Umberto committed suicide after by hanging himself in the garage after taking his son to school. I underline this because the symptoms that we use, they are published in the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, is all around the world, are not appropriate for depressed men. And depression in men is underdiagnosed. Depression is more frequent in female, but suicide let us see this histogram, are much more frequent in male, the blue bar. They are very frequent, and this is a case of another specialty of medicine. This is a case of psychiatry. Moreover, we can see another big problem. Gina, at 72 years, started to have cognitive impairment with quick progression to dementia, but she died at 92, so she passed 20 years with a very important dementia. Dementia, this is a geriatric case. I underline this to show and to say how all specialty of medicine are importantly have to be known and studied on the basis of sex and gender differences. This is a geriatric case. Dementia is for 2/3 a women problem in all over the world. And then I see the last case, clinic case, with Agostino and Maria. They had a COVID in 20 where they were not yet vaccinated. Okay, Maria, 70 years old, have fever for 3 days. But Agostino, 72 years old, he was for 10 days in intensive care unit, for 20 days in internal medicine unit, because he had very severe respiratory failure and acute renal failure. I will stop a little in this COVID-19 to show to you some differences, why women did die less than men. This is the fatality rate in women and in men in Italy. But this phenomenon was demonstrated all over the world. These are all a lot of different countries, Indonesia, Ecuador, Spain, Belgium, Sweden, Italy, England. You see that the blue, that means the men mortality, is always much higher. Why this? Why this? And this is perhaps because female are a little more, pay more attention to the rules. For sure, this is correct, but there are also some other biochemical motivation. Let us have a look to this cartoon. This is a SARS-CoV-19, the viruses, which arrive to the cell. He can enter to the cell with a receptor SA2. When he bound to this receptor, it enters. But when the receptor enters the cell stops to synthesize receptors. So after a while, this entry is stopped. There is another kind of entry, and this is a protein called transmembrane protease serine 2. And this protein binds the spike protein of the viruses and enter without any stop, enter continuously. So this is a good way to enter, because after a while stop. This is bad because it continues to enter. Okay, let us have a look. ACE2 is encoded in the X chromosomes in a region which escaped to inactivation. And ACE2 is much more, for this reason, is much more expressed in female sex. Moreover, estrogen stimulates ACE2. And on the other side, the MPRSS2 is regulated by androgens. Androgens induce this protein expression, and it was possible to understand that androgen inhibitors on SARS-CoV-2 infection and of course on COVID-19, as for prostatic cancer men. Moreover, immune response, innate and adaptive immune response, is much stronger in females than in males. And also I think I have to underline, estrogen stimulates anti-inflammatory effect. Testosterone has an immune suppressive effect. So you can very well understand that all these mechanisms, biochemical mechanisms, are much worse in men, and cause in this balance has a much more importance in causing mortality for COVID-19. I could not have gone so in detail with other disease, but I did like to underline the COVID-19 story. In 2017, a very good paper on Nature was underlined that there is a huge consequence of having two X chromosome versus an X and Y. The X and the J, chromosome have more influence on cell than first it was thought, because the hormones are only a part of the study. We think always that the difference between men and women are estrogen and androgen. When a cells have an XY or an XX, the metabolism of the cell is very different independently of estrogens and androgens of hormones. It now seems that genetic sex of cell is crucial too. Cellular sex may also help explain why women have and men have this susceptibility to, for example, also drugs. I showed to you a very synthesis of a paper published by National Institute of Health some years ago, where they demonstrated that cell under stress, the male cell suicide, the female cell resist. So it is really a big difference. And I showed the recommendation for scientific research already from 2011 of NI, National Institute of Health. My monitor difference and similarity for all human diseases that affect both sex is very important. We have to promote research on gender differences at cellular level and study gender differences since the cradle. So, gender medicine does not exist as gender medicine, as a separate specialty of medicine. Why? And I think you have understood till now why I say this. We have seen cardiology cases, geriatric cases, where we can go in the orthopedic specialty, in oncology, rheumatology, basic science, internal medicine, and moreover we can go in the intrauterine life, in organ transplants. We can see all the problem of devices, the surgery, the otorhinolaryngology, infectious disease, occupational disease, all specialties of medicine. So we are still speaking about gender medicine as a separate specialty. No, this is not correct. We have at least to start to speak on gender-specific medicine. Gender medicine involves all branches of medicine. We have to move from a concept of gender medicine to sex and gender-specific medicine, because all medical specialties are involved. Otherwise, we create a parallel street, and we don't really apply to all specialty of medicine the importance of taking care of the difference between male and female. Research is advancing rapidly. This is sex and gender difference, number of publications in Web Science from 2000 to 2021. You see that they are very well increasing. Cardiovascular disease is the specialty which increase more rapidly, and also oncology, fortunately, but also immunology is coming up, and we hope in few years that we will have much more data on the differences. Where are we in Italy? In Italy, we are in a very good situation. We have a very good network, among associations, society, specialized on gender medicine, but also all society, and also scientific society, and now also university and regions. We have a nice newsletter that you can find in this website of the center I have founded, that I am President, Centro Studi Nazionale su Salute e Medicina di Genere. We have a very nice and important journal, the Journal of Sex and Gender Specific Medicine. It was before the Italian journal, but now it became Journal of Sex and Gender Specific Medicine, since his internationality is very increased. But very important is the law that was approved by the Parliament in 2018. And how can this law be diffused and applied? This law is diffused and applied because we have a plan for the application and the diffusion of gender medicine in Italy. I'm sorry for the voice. Not only recently, we have also from April 23 a national training plan underlined by the Minister of Health and the Minister of University and research. And this is a very important step because this calls all providers to prepare training on the basis of different gender specific medicine, Italian National Institute of Health, all university, the regions that in Italy are the hub for healthcare system, scientific societies, professional association, health and care professional councils, scientific foundation, and the recipient are the university students of all sanitary courses, postgraduate training, university staff, healthcare workers, and they should be supported by National Health Service and all the university. And this is a very big responsibility. So just to arrive to the end, the law, the dissemination plan, the training plan are a revolution for the national health system that in Italy is through regions, for all universities, for medical council, for scientific society, for research center, for pharmaceutical industry that are very afraid that guideline may be changed, and of course of all regulatory agency, Italian and international also. And the gender-specific medicine then is a kind of revolution for daily medical practice. Gender-specific medicine thus is scientific and ethic duty for all medical specialties. And in Italy, it is a legal duty. So if you go and see in all our television, if you see in all our journal this kind of picture, we have to underline also that whenever there are gender differences affecting physical, mental and social health of the individual and of the population in the world, this is gender-specific medicine at world level. So, just to summarize, gender-specific medicine is a must, is a scientific must, ethic must, moral, social and political at global level, since it takes care of everything that alters our humanity and our physical and mental health as men and as women. And in Italy, it is the law. I thank you for the attention with this slide, which remember me and to all the Padua, Italy Mondial International Congress that have been held in Padua in the September last year. Thank you very much.
Okay, so of course we thank Professor Baggio, and now we are moving to the second presentation. That is, this was again to understand a little bit better the meaning of gender medicine, the meaning of gender medicine in terms also in this period of specialized, personalized medicine. So I introduce also, so the second speaker is Professor Silvana Madaloni. He's currently a senior scientist at the University of Padova, and she has been professor of artificial intelligence here at the University of Padova. She was the API of one important European project named Gender Time, founded for 5 years from 2011. And she is also a member of the University of Padova's Elena Cornaro Center. And she teaches the course Gender Knowledge and Ethics in Artificial Intelligence that is, is offered as a transversal course inside the University of Padova. So it's a pleasure to introduce her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for... Thank you so much for having invited me to speak at this panel. I apologize if I read my English. I will introduce the idea of gender innovation with a focus on artificial intelligence. Let's talk about gender in science. There are three approaches to address this problem. The first approach is called a fixed number of women. It is necessary to know gender statistics to have a snapshot of the situation from a gender point of view. A second approach is that of fixed institution, adopted by the framework program of the European Commission, which aims to implement structural transformation of scientific institutions through appropriate gender policies. The third approach is to the issue of gender in science is fixed knowledge. It is a question of integrating the gender dimension into scientific content at the level of creating innovation. So, fixed knowledge means integrating the gender dimension, but how we can redesign scientific theories taking into account the gender dimension, reformulating the scientific question that can produce gender innovation in every field of knowledge, not only in medicine. We have done a formal reflection on the scientific method utilized to produce innovation and a critical analysis of the logical argumentation rules underlying it. You can find this research in this paper. I will leave you the slide. But only complete redefinition of the method and the research model with new ways of observation can redesign science in a gender perspective. Londa Schibinger is the main expert of gender innovation of the Stanford University. She will be here next week in an important conference organized by Centro Cornaro next week at the University of Padua. She said, to fix the knowledge means to incorporate the gender dimension into all knowledge that is produced and use this knowledge. Then we will have reached our goal. This is the only way to ensure we have excellence in science. And in this website, you can find a lot of case studies concerning gender innovation in different fields of knowledge. Here are some case studies. You can see, se riesco. This is Linda, the first pregnant mannequin of the world, computer simulated for car crash test, to gender medicine with brain research, heart disease, osteoporosis research, and assistive technology for the elderly, and machine learning analyzing gender. But you can find a lot of other case studies if you go to this website. Let's say something about this assistive technology for the elderly care. The population will age dramatically in 2050. So it is important to design intelligent robot assistants to assist all population. To the same, it is necessary to understand how sex and gender interact and to take into account that there are many differences. From sex point of view, for instance, dementia affects men and women alike in their age. But as women live longer in many developed countries, they suffer longer. Arthritis, it is much more common in women. Deafness, it is much common in men. To design intelligent robot assistant, so it is necessary to combine sex-related physical needs and gender-related social needs. Moreover, designers should be aware that the majority of the elderly are women. About this, I've already Giovanella Baggio has presented the problem of heart disease in women, which is ischemic heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States and European population for men and for women. You have already seen the statistic about this, so I go. Let us examine the question of gender in AI. It is well known that there are many applications of AI in different disciplines, for instance in medicine, which are very efficient and powerful. Here in this talk, we will focus on some problems connected to gender ethnic biases subsumed by the AI algorithms. Let's see. Some word on AI, only one slide, just to speak to everybody. AI is a scientific discipline that aims to define and develop programs and machines that behave in a way that, if they were human, would be defined as being intelligent. But how can a machine be called intelligent? What is intelligence? We can adopt the operative approach of the Turing test, which defines intelligence as imitation based on this idea. If a machine were able to imitate a human being, one could say it was able to think. There are many things to tell about this, but I have to go. There are two different approaches in artificial intelligence. The top-down one, based on symbolic and logical reasoning. From the problem to the solution, the system determines the steps adopted to solve the problem. And the other one is bottom-up, is the approach of machine learning based on example and method of generalization. Let's see. The machine learning system, usually a neural network or its evolved modification, is trained with many examples of input-output behavior in order to be able to generalize and be able to recognize and deal with different inputs from those of the training set. It learns from examples. It is a powerful data classification system in different contexts. It finds solutions to many problems, and it is at the origin of this huge AI success. The general architecture where you can see here the general architecture of AI, where you can see the two components, machine learning and reasoning, okay? Very well distinguished. Can we speak of biased machine learning? Yes. With the spread of applications that use machine learning techniques, increasing attention is having the possible consequence that such applications have on ethical and social level. Machine learning systems, due to their intrinsic nature, can subsume the biases spread in society on gender and ethnicity, represented in the data set used for training, and can lead to unfair decision. What is fairness? Here is a definition of fairness. Fairness is the absence of any prejudice or favoritism towards an individual or a group based on their inherent or acquired characteristics. It's a broad concept, fairness, but here is the definition. Let's see briefly what we intend with bias. As bias, we intend a system of shared knowledge in society, for or against something. Stereotypes can help us to deal with the different unknown world. They become central when our world is threatened. They can take the status, then they can take the status of judgments that characterize facts and or people. In other words, they become prejudice. At this point, a vicious circle among stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination can arise. And machine learning algorithms, like people, are vulnerable to this distortion. Joshua Bencho of the Montreal University said, AI can amplify discrimination biases, such as gender and racial discrimination, because those are present in the data. The technology is trained on reflecting people's behavior. Let's see some examples. The most famous is this one. Joy Boulamini, Afro-American researcher at MIT Media Lab, was discovered that the telecamera system installed in her laboratory didn't recognize her well. She put on a white mask and the system functioned perfectly. So she wrote a paper titled, "Facial Recognition is Accurate if you are a white guy." She realized that the accuracy with which an image is recognized was higher, as you can see in this list, if you are a white guy, a white man, and lower for black women. Another example is this about Amazon hiring system. Machine learning specialists at Amazon found that their new recruitment engine did not like women. Why? The system, a machine learning system, was trained on the CV of people hired in the previous 10 years. In technical roles, most were women, lapsus, were men. So the automatic recruitment tool preferred male candidates. It was deactivated. And this is terrible. Compass, a system developed in the United States to predict the likelihood of recidivism. This system found that black defendants were far more likely than white defendants to be incorrectly judged to be at a higher risk of recidivism. However, for white defendants, the opposite was true. You can see the score, the index score. The system, not that white defendant had, as you can see, maybe you can read, I don't know, here heavier sentences than black defendant. The system is still in use in Wisconsin, maybe in other states. Let's say that AI is a white man business. Women are only 50% of the staff of AI at Facebook, 10% in Google. At universities, it is not much better. The inequality is even higher if one look at the skin color. As written in this paper, the diversity problem is not just about women. It is about gender, race, and most fundamentally, about power. Biases are not only present in data set, but also in the community. So, we must not perform blind application of machine learning techniques that could lead to a strong reinforcement of existing social and gender bias. We have to apply methods of the biasing data set and find more reliable methods for bias mitigation. ChatGPT, some word about this. I imagine that you will know well. If you ask, I asked yesterday, what is artificial intelligence? This is the answer. Artificial intelligence. The answer is accurate if you read this kind. There is no time to read. It's good. It's acceptable. But I'm showing you another example of a communication with ChatGPT in Italian and in English. In the same day, 2 days ago. So I asked them, se in una gara supero il secondo, come arrivo? E Chat answered, se in una gara superi il secondo, arrivi al primo posto. It's okay? No, it's wrong. I continue and I asked them, se in una gara supero il secondo, come arrivo? Il Chat answered, mi scuso per la risposta errata precedentemente, 2 minutes before. Se superi il secondo in una gara, arrivi al terzo posto. It's still wrong. Terrible. So I tried to put the question in English, and the answer was okay. If you overtake the person in second place in a race, you would take their position and you would then be in second place. These are called hallucinations. ChatGPT, it may suffer from hallucination. That is, the model can confidently state things, facts that are actually totally invented. One of the advantages of ChatGPT is its ability to learn not only from data set, but from the conversation with the user. The system has learned not to contradict the user. It shows compliance with the user and gives plausible answer. But plausibility is different from truth, okay? So hallucination, plausibility. There is a great danger now on the behavior of ChatGPT and in the future. The system can generate false, inappropriate, and dangerous content. These contents are then disclosed to a wide audience, creating false belief. Careful checks are necessary to avoid the spread of falsehood and the possibility of discrimination. We wanted to develop, at this point, let's say, a trustworthy AI. With this aim, the European Commission produced many reports. This is an important report, but some days ago, on 14th of June this year, the European Parliament approved a regulation called the AI Act, which aimed to regulate the implementation of AI in European Union. Here you can find the text. It is a risk-based approach to regulation, distinguishing between the various use of AI that create unacceptable risk, AI risk, a low or minimum risk. This is the ranking. Some applications are forbidden. For example, biometric identification in real time in public spaces that use face recognition. Biometric identification ex post on video registration, except when authorized by a judge. Also, predictive policing systems based on profiling, place, and criminal histories. And 3 others applications are explicitly forbidden. Concluding, I would like to talk about educational goals, in particular described in a course that I have held. By the way, next year this course will be incorporated in the course curriculum for biomedical students. The teachers are Antonio Rodà and me, with the contribution of invited speakers from other disciplines. The course aims to provide the basic knowledge and principle to develop an artificial intelligence we can trust in an inclusive and ethical perspective. An analysis from a point of view of gender, ethnicity, personal and social development of machine learning algorithms have been proposed, and the ethical issues related to AI technologies have been addressed in a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary context. The syllabus is at this link. Concluding, updating training education programs in computer science, but not only, following a multidisciplinary approach is crucial. We strongly believe also that to mitigate the presence of gender bias in computer science, diversity in the area of machine learning is essential. Advancing women's careers in AI, therefore, is not only a right in itself, it is essential to prevent bias and to improve the efficacy of AI-based system. As Francesca Rossi said, the real purpose is not to improve technology, but to improve ourselves and our society through the use of technology. Thanks.
thank you very much, Professor Badaloni, for this very exhaustive presentation. We learned a lot of things, I think, this evening. It's now evening. And now it's time to bring the discussion and open a discussion on the bioengineering side, because we learned that this gender issue, talking about gender bioengineering, is not just an ethical issue, but is also a methodological issue. And so I ask the colleagues to come to the stage, please, so we can start the discussion. Yeah, we have Professor Silvia Conforto, Professor Alberto Greco, Noemi Giordano, Silvia Orlandi, Silvania Quaglini, Maria Gabriella Signorini e Francesca Susin.
So I think, yes, I think it works. So thank you for being here. And I think it's interesting to open this discussion because it's interesting for 2 points of view. First, because I think this is a research question. It's not a gender question. We are not speaking about we want to be half and half inside the university, community, whatever. This is, of course, it's, you know, it's another discussion. This discussion is more a research discussion. We are generating a bias in conducting our research without taking into account the differences in physiology between men and women. And so this, I think, is the core business of this roundtable. And it's interesting, I think, you know, just to give a look of a composition of this roundtable that is mainly composed by women. And I can understand why. I mean, it's a research, again, question. It's really, it's not female, it's not, it's a research question, but when we, you know, I and, you know, Chiara, we didn't select the people, just we ask who want to be involved in this roundtable. So the majority of the answer came from women. So the first question is to you, because you are the only man. There is a second that is not in a body here, but is, you know, is in any case there will be also a second opinion coming from Marco Knaflitz, that is not here. But the question is for you, and why? Why do you think we have this imbalance?
Difficult question, actually. And yes, this question and the composition of our panel today might suggest that gender medicine and gender bioengineering is of lesser importance to men. And this might be true if we consider what is happening now, and if we consider that the visibility and also the privilege of men, especially those that are cisgender, they might not be aware of the significance of gender differences because they have never directly impacted their life. And but more, in my opinion, because we are in a society, the research society, the university society that does not give emphasis, does not give an education that emphasizes the importance of gender differences at a methodological point of view, and not only the ethical point of view. And instead, this is something that is a relevant issue, relevant discussion to everybody, not only from an ethical point of view, as we said before, because this might lead to unreliable results, so biased results, and ineffective therapies, for example. And so I think that we should encourage a wider and more diversified composition of our panel, and participation of our discussion. But if we see the audience, actually, even if the panel is, I am the only man in the panel, but the audience is maybe half and half. So we are in the good way, probably. So this could be the first step to encourage a wider and more diversified discussion.
Yeah, I think we have also an answer from the University of Torino, so from Marco, throughout.
Yes, I was asked by Marco to be here.
Of course, you can give your opinion, but
of course. Yes, yeah. When he asked me to be here on his behalf, I first asked him why you wanted to be there and why you wanted to deliver your male opinion to the audience. Because of course I was aware that only 2 males were here, and so I think it was relevant. And he said that typically when it comes to speaking about gender, males tend to out-exclude because they tend to think about themselves as disqualified somehow because they experienced they were less affected than women by the gender issues in their own experience, and so they tend to believe that they're not as qualified as women to deliver their own experience to the others. But I also think that we learned before that it's not really a bias in a single direction, because we also understood from the video from Professor Baggi, for example, that in some medical fields, also, the bias is also in the other direction, because, for example, the densitometry was performed more on women than men. So it's not only in a single direction, and so both opinions are relevant, and both genders are to give their opinion and to also take up their responsibility in building a more gender equal research environment, I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Professor Conforto, Professor Susin, and Professor Orlandi. In your research area, how is it crucial to account for sex or gender, then if you can differentiate a difference, and if you can give some examples to the audience? Let's start with Silvia.
Thank you, Chiara. Thank you to have invited me here, because this induced in me a reflection on something I was not so, familiar with. Not so used to think about. I work on human movement analysis, just to make an example. So it's several years I'm dealing with neuromuscular diseases, but also motor control and development of motor competencies. And I think that we have differences, of course. We have a difference at several stages, because, as you know, motor competencies develop through all our life. And as they develop, they change, and we can lose some motor competencies. But what is important is that women and men have a different development. For example, as we know, men are an higher muscular force, but women develop an higher dexterity, for example. And this affects a lot the life, and also when we become elderly, this can affect data and also what we have seen before, because these different motor competencies that are strictly related to also cognitive competencies can change the well-being in our late phase of life. So from a methodological point of view, I think we have to start to deal with this stuff. Looking for differences in order to have a better knowledge, and also to go in the direction of depersonalized medicine as well. That is, we have to change the paradigm, because typically the scientific approach is to generalize from data to generalization. Now maybe we have to work back, and this is my.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. My research area focuses on, mainly focuses on cardiovascular flows modeling. And if we remember what Giovanella Baggio said about cardiovascular gender medicine, it is clear that in that area, sex plays a fundamental role in determining both wellness state and disease states. So it is my opinion that any engineering activity which is devoted to the cardiovascular environment must include sex specificities among the fundamental variables in order to guarantee a rigorous methodological approach to the investigation. Otherwise, we are at a high risk of developing research in which results which has to be meant like, for example, therapeutical tools or diagnostic tools and so on, are at high risk of being tailored mainly for one of the two sexes, or maybe even not appropriate actually for any of the one. And to give an example, I can refer to the case of the aortic valve stenosis, which is a cardiovascular disease particularly frequent in the elderly population, in both men and women. And among the factors that distinguish men and women for this disease is the fact that the leaflets of the valve, of the stenotic valves, are more fibrotic in women and more calcific in men, with quite an important difference. And as an engineer, I cannot forget the possibility that such a difference may play an important role in determining the dynamic response of the leaflets, which in turn can have a role in the behavior of blood across the stenotic valve, which in turn can determine the amount of overpressure required to the heart to pump out blood from the stenotic orifice. So if we forget this difference, we are at high risk of producing results which do not represent the real situation. And again, remaining on the case of the stenotic valve, aortic valve, let's talk about, for example, to the experimental tests that have to be performed according to the standards prior to the commercialization of any improved or new artificial heart valve. And let's think to the case of the transcatheter aortic implantation. The standard requires that the site of implant, the experimental, the in vitro site of implant, is as close as possible to the real case. And also in this case, we must account for differences in the mechanical response of the real material in the women and men human beings. And I could propose really a very large number of examples. Just to conclude, Giovanella also recalled the role played by the enzymatic cascade in which the ACE2 receptor is present. And this same cascade is also among the factors that control the vasodilation and vasorestriction mechanisms, which are at the basis of the pressure control in the cardiovascular circulation. So, the behavior of this enzymatic cascade differs between the two sexes. So we cannot forget that.
Same question for Silvia.
So good evening, everyone. So the answer to the question is that is crucial, at least in my experience. So the fields of application that I work on, they are mostly linked to biomedical signal processing, but also to developing new technologies for patients that are starting from like pediatric age to elderly. So I would want to present a couple of examples that I had to deal with, especially linked to sex and gender. So the first one is, I think, something that most of you heard about it, that is speech analysis and voice analysis. So in this case of analysis, we usually consider sex differences more than gender differences. So I think that in technologies development, we should consider some kind of differences between sex and gender, a little bit different from what Professor Baggio presented before, in my opinion. So in speech analysis, usually you have to consider different fundamental frequencies or formant or resonance frequencies. There are different. So in that case, when you develop new technologies linked to these topics, you need to consider these kind of differences. The second example is more something that I didn't expect to deal with. So in my experience that I had outside of Italy in Canada for 5 years, I was working with children with disabilities, and they were children with cerebral palsy and speech impairment. And we designed game, or we can say an application, a software application that is basically a game, if we want. And we decided to develop these technologies during focus group meetings. So we actually interview children, and we didn't consider any kind of differences between boys and girls. So what happens was that we decided, okay, we want to interview 10 children, and we said, okay, let's pick 5 boys and 5 girls. And the results were completely unexpected, because they basically picked different avatars, different colors, and we understood that also when you are an early age, like a schooler kids or teenagers, the differences are already there. So basically, I think that what we should focus as biomedical engineers is probably personalized technologies, or how we can personalize technologies, apart from the differences that are already there, as also Professor Conforto said. Basically, when you deal with a body or biomechanical system, of course you should consider a lot of differences that are already there. But when you actually deal with technologies or technologies for rehabilitation, what we should do. So in my experience, it matters, but it also matters as other kind of variables or factors we should consider, like, as I said, age, gender, ethnicity, and other things. So this is what I discovered in my research.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going with my second question. This could be a little bit wide question, but just to start to think about, is what are the methodological approaches usable to solve this problem? And what are the criticalities in developing or more in introducing the gender medicine concept in our field? So I'm starting with Laila first.
Thank you. First of all, thank you. Welcome to everybody. My first point is to thank in particular Chiara and Alessandra, because when they asked me to participate, to ask for my participation to this roundtable, I was, as all the others, a bit, I don't know, I asked myself what I can provide, what I can give as a contribution, and after I started to study a bit and to reflect about which can be the importance in the bioengineering community. And importance I discovered is it is the first time that in the bioengineering community we face these issues, we face this problem. We can have different opinion about the importance in a range, the possible range of things that are interesting for our community, but it is an occasion to open to another or another view, and this is always interesting. Concerning the question posed by Alessandra, thinking to the main methodological options, the main methodological approaches we can introduce, my first keyword is research, good research. I'm working in signal processing. Basically, I'm working in the fetal early life antepartum analysis. So pregnancy is a phenomenon that in 40 weeks in which an individual passes from 2 cells to 3 kilos. So a very fast and a very complicated and a very full of changes phenomenon. So in this case, I faced a problem which was related to the fairness of the database we were considering, and this point came to my attention due to a friend, which is a philosopher, that started asking me in which way I have collected the data that were used to map in general the risk of pathological case that happens. And starting to evaluate starting to think about fairness, we observed that we had collected data directly in a clinical environment. So the population was not harmonized. So from the ethnical point of view, the women were unbalanced, were in groups that were unbalanced. So making this hypothesis about the increased risk during pregnancies did not take into account the specificity of the different ethnical communities that even in the hospital in which we collect data are present. So this is a very simple example about what opening mind in this to this problem can produce. About criticalities, the main criticalities is for me is the I could say a cultural. I need to improve my cultural involvement in about this topic, and I think it's a shared problem, a shared condition.
Thank you very much, Silvana.
Thank you. First of all, I join my colleagues in thanking the organizer of this roundtable for introducing this new argument. When they invited me, I started thinking about the difference between the gender medicine and gender bioengineering, no? Because the boundary is very, very thin. So I start thinking how, as bioengineers, we can help in this problem, no? And I found 3 main chances. First of all, as Lella already said, we are researchers, so first of all, perform a good research on the topic, but we are also teachers. So we, in our courses, we have students, and many of us is teaching also about statistics, the biomedical data analysis, data mining, machine learning, and so on. So probably we should start. For example, we have to teach how to face, how to tackle biases. And in doing examples about bias, now we know that this is a very good example that we can teach about, no? In order to let them understand how important is this problem. We teach the formulas for the sample size, no? So we can start teaching about the fact that the sample size from here on must take into account also the necessity of doing subgroups analysis, no? Men and women are different groups. So this is one opportunity that we have for start, let's say, making these problems, making our students more aware about the issue, because I'm convinced that everything starts from education, as in every other fields. Second, we are involved as biomedical engineering, or mostly as for those of us who are also clinical engineers, in the ethical committees. We hate the ethical committees in general because they are boring with so much bureaucracy and so on, but in this case they could represent also an opportunity, no? Because in the ethical committees we have to approve the clinical trials, and we have so the opportunity of saying for this clinical trial we have to take into account also the gender issue. So this is something that we can do to make the people more sensitive to the problem. The third aspect is that as engineers, many of us do applied research, and we have several contacts with companies, no? Companies developing technologies. I give you also my example in this area. We are working in telemedicine, so we are developing applications where patients wear some smartwatch, like this one, for example. And also, the colleague talked about the implantable devices, but also for wearable devices there is this problem. Because, for example, we found that females are more likely to have a small wrist. And if the smartwatch is so big and the sensors are located in the back and the contact with the skin area is not enough to get good signals. So also the design of these wearable devices must change to take into account these things. And this is something that we can talk with the companies and make them sensitive also for these issues. So, okay, this is my very, let's say, practical ways to face the problem with these three different counterparts.
Thank you. And last to you.
Thank you, and thank you for the question again. And I completely agree with who spoke before me. And I wanted to put the focus on the design side because it's the one I have most experience about. And I also wanted to share some recent experience from myself. I'm also working on telemedicine and design of wearable devices. And recently, in my research, in the research group I'm working with, we designed a device for the prevention of acute heart failure, which must be placed on the left hemithorax of the patient. And of course, everyone I'm talking about this with is asking, okay, but is it suitable for women? And that is a natural question, and it's a relevant question as well. And of course, I asked myself the same question from the very start of the project. Our first concern was that, of course, breasts could prevent the positioning of the device on the chest, and so that could prevent the recording of good quality signals. But in the very end, when we designed the device and we realized the device and we validated the device on a healthy population, on population of healthy subjects, and in the very end, what we discovered is that the breasts were not a problem at all, but the problem was that females had narrow chests. So the problem was the dimension of the patch, and not really the positioning. By taking into account the position of the breast. So from this point of view, I think that the main value that I could experience concerning gender bioengineering was the representativity of both genders in the research group, because we faced the problem from the very start, from the conceptualization, and not only when we had to validate it when we were at the clinical stage, because of course having a balanced data set, so having a balanced representativity in the subjects you test the device on is of key importance, and that was highlighted by many speakers before me. But I think that what's also of key importance is to start the design of the project by keeping in mind that the project should be beneficial for every people, and should either consider the differences and make a device that that can fit all people regardless of their differences, or take the differences as an added value and then deliver maybe 2 different versions of the device that fit differently the 2 genders. But I think that the representativity in the researchers and not only in the subjects is of key importance, because the 2 genders can deliver a different experience, and because of course the society raised us in a slightly different way, and so we have a different sensitivity towards different themes. And so I think that representativity of 2 genders is of key importance to start the project in the right way to deliver a gender equal device.
Thank you very much. We are going for the last question.
Last question. We have much more, but unfortunately we are very, very late, and they force us to close in a few minutes. So I ask to Silvia Conforto first, then Francesca Susin and Silvana, and to Silvia Orlandi very quickly. If you can say, what is the level of consciousness about this issue, of the gender issue in bioengineering in your research area? So, for example, in journal, reviewers, how much do they pay attention to this? And well, it is important also for the young people here understand that also for publishing it's important to take account of this.
So very, very short, not so much. I think not at all, maybe, because maybe we have an imbalance in the sample population generally. We have difficulty in finding a balanced sample test in women and men, but when we are mixed situation, when you have 5 men and 5 women, I didn't remember any question from the referee, really, not at all. Maybe a lot of questions regarding statistics and parameters and index and so on, but nothing about the sample.
Okay, very, very briefly, me too. I have 3 points. The first one, when the analyzed conditions is sex unspecific, it means that it refers to both the sexes, the awareness of fluid dynamics modelers is almost equal to 0. There is some attention with respect to sex-specific conditions, typically the pregnancy in women, but also other sex-specific conditions in men. But in that case, the overall number of investigation is much, much, much lower than. And when we consider, for the last point, when we consider the transsexual individuals and or the intersexual individuals, to the best of my knowledge, so far, no cardiovascular flows models have been proposed. And this is the negative side of the situation. But the positive one is that when I talk about these things to my students, I always find in both boys and girls very enthusiastic people which are absolutely ready to start a gendered bioengineering.
So answering about the sensitivity of people in publications, for example, you ask about reviewers, no? If it never happened that somebody asked me about, and we did a lot of study with data analysis. We collected data on clinical studies, but about clinical, but nobody asked me. On the contrary, as you know very well, the calls for projects take into account this issue, but it seems that it's only for a regulation, no? So it's only apparently important, but it's more, yes. So when I say that, somebody told me that now in the last calls, there is a call in the European Commission that they give more rewards, more points to a project if the proposal has exactly the same number of males and females. This is crazy, according to me. This is not the right way to face the issue. So the answer is no, there is no real sensitivity about the problem if not for these regulatory aspects.
Okay, so it happens to me. They asked me. They did. Actually twice. One in during the review, of course, during the reviewing process. So again, it was really a paper linked to speech analysis and voice analysis. So in that case, we actually added these differences. So we reported that. They asked us to split the data in subsets. So in that case, we had to report it. So, and then instead, it happened to me, and I completely agree that the problem is the sample size, especially in the new field of application that I'm working with on brain-computer interface or virtual reality applications. We usually have 10, 12 participants at the beginning. So in that case, it doesn't make any sense to add it. So if the reviewer asks, I just say that it's impossible to give an answer. But it actually happened a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, actually, in a conference in North America, that they asked me during the presentation and say, okay, have you collected the, like gender and sex information? And the papers, the presentation was related to newborns. So I was surprised. I say, of course, we collected this related to the sex, but I don't have any information about the gender. And they asked me, okay, but you collected data about the families. And I say, yes, I did. So why you didn't consider this in your model? So what I discovered is that in other countries, probably not in Italy yet, but based on the presentation that we heard at the beginning of this roundtable, probably we should consider this because linked to the awareness level that we should have. Probably also in bioengineering, we should start collecting data linked to gender and sex, no matter what. Because based on the artificial intelligence technologies and everything that is going on, probably we should be aware also in Italy, and it's more I want to conclude my answer to this with a provocative question. Maybe as an Italian community of biomedical engineering, we should consider to collect all of this information just to start thinking that maybe in the future we probably need some good practice guidelines on collecting also this information. So, sorry for pointing out this way.
Absolutely. So it's important, I think, to recognize that it's a research problem as first. No? It is able to generate bias in our devices, in our results, in our drug results, whatever. So we are concluding, and so I have just a general question, if there is any other comment that we wanted to know. You wanted to say? Okay, yes, sure.
My comment is about the opportunity that this open problem offers to all the bioengineers involved in any kind of research. I connect this opportunity with another word, another keyword that is complexity. Doing research in any field, in any topic is more complex than we can imagine at the start. That is not limited to a specific single method, a specific single case, as the presentation at the start showed. We have always to take into account that several factors produce the behaviors and also the diseases that we have to study. So open to the complexity could be my final keywords in this topic. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the man. No, what I would like to stress is, but probably we haven't pointed out the difference that is really between the gender and sex. Because we usually use them as synonymous, but they are not, and they should be considered in a different way. Also, from the methodological point of view, I can bring you an example. My research area, my research group, we find innovative solution to help to support the diagnosis of some disease. In a recent project, we are involved in the diagnosis of COPD patients, so patients with pulmonary disease. And in this case, we know that since the embryonic phase, there are functional and anatomical differences between individuals with different sex, in the lungs and in the respiratory tracts. So in that case, it's important to consider sex differences, so biological differences. Instead, there are different areas, different diseases, for example, psychiatric disease, in which instead the gender, so a concept that is more related to society, economical and cultural differences, is much more important than sex. So it's much more significant in the model, in the predictive model, than sex. And for example, it's easy to understand that if we consider an example in which we have a higher predominance, a higher probability of women and transgender of being subjected to mental and physical violence. And this is correlated to depression and to post-traumatic stress disorder, to social anxiety disorders. So in that case, it's easy to understand how the gender more than the sex is in addition to the sex, let's say, is a significant variable that should be included in the model. So it's also very important to differentiate between these two aspects because we need a reliable model that reflects reality, and so this is important as well.
Thank you very much. I thank you all for being here and for your really valuable contribution to the discussion. I thank the audience too for being here till the end. And I hope you enjoyed the discussion. And I think that now there is the welcome, yes, on the